The mystery of Ishmael.
Yes. Now, this is prophetic. This has affected every one of our lives. I mean, to this day, you're talking about news reports, is all linked to a mystery that goes back to the tents of Abraham. And it's amazing. The whole world, the piece of the world hangs on a mystery that happened in this desert dweller tent with these two sons. And it's behind everything from Islam to Muhammad to Osama bin Laden to Yasser Arafat to the threats on America, all the way back to Abraham's tent. I mean, really, every answer is in the Bible. And so we go back to Abraham. God gives him the promise, I will give you a son. A great nation will come from you. But as we know, Sarah, he comes up with an idea. Well, God's not doing it, so you know what? We got to help God out, and that's always a danger sign. We're going to help God out, and you go into the handmaid Hagar, and you'll have a baby through her because I can't have a baby. So he does, and what happens comes out Ishmael. Here's Abraham's firstborn son, Ishmael. Now, Ishmael, he is there for years before there's anybody else. He is viewed as the heir to Abraham. When God speaks to Abraham and says, I'm going to do a great thing, what Abraham says is, yes, Ishmael will be the one. So everybody thought it was Ishmael. Everybody thought Ishmael was the one of the promise, including Abraham, Hagar had to have, Sarah had to have. So they thought this was the way. So he's growing up as the one. Now, at one point, God gives a prophecy concerning Ishmael. Now, God promises God will make Ishmael a great nation as well. He'll give him much. But he also says he'll be wild. He also says his sword will be against everybody. His hand will be against everybody. So it's going to be a wild kind of thing going on there with Ishmael. But he's going to be blessed. But the thing is, but keep in mind, now here's what happens. Then, all of a sudden, God comes back and says, now, no, you, Sarah, old Sarah, you are going to have a baby. And Sarah laughs, and God says, Sarah, why'd you laugh? And Sarah says, I didn't laugh. He says, no, you did. And so the name of the baby is going to be called Laughter, because they laughed. So in Hebrew, that's Yitzhak, which is Isaac. So you have Ishmael, and you have Isaac. Now, what happens is, because of the conflict between the two sons, it comes to a point where Sarah says, and then God says, no, Abraham, it's okay, it's my will. You're going to have to send away Hagar and Ishmael. Okay, so Hagar and Ishmael go away to the desert. God takes care of them and gives a promise again. He confirms, I'm going to make a great nation. But think of something. We don't usually think about this. Imagine you're Ishmael. Okay, you're Ishmael, and you're growing up as the beloved son of your father, and then all of a sudden comes another child. Now, sibling rivalry is a problem to begin with, but here's another child. Now he's the one. So first of all, what you're going to be feeling? Probably jealousy, probably resentful. Then you lose everything. When you're about 13, you lose everything. You lose the birthright. You lose what looks like your inheritance. You lose your father. You lose all that honored position. You lose all that. And he's just becoming a teenager now. What is that going to do to him? Now, from him come much of the Arab peoples, as we know. There's no question from Ishmael came the Ishmaelites. From the Ishmaelites, there's no question that the blood of the Ishmaelites is throughout the Arab world, whether there's also other blood as well. But we have ancient records from the Babylonians, even from the Assyrians, that link up the Ishmaelites with the Arab peoples. We even have records of Arab peoples before Muhammad, before Islam came, where they said, we are the children of Ishmael. When Muhammad came, he said, I'm from Ishmael, we're from Ishmael. So now, no matter what, they've taken up the mantle of Ishmael. The Arab civilization had some great, wonderful things, and I love Arab people, and I love when they get saved. You know, one of my greatest blessings as a Jewish believer is to find an Arab believer who loves the Lord. It's the most wonderful thing in the world. Amen. But there's a mystery going on throughout history. Clearly, the blood of Ishmael is there among the Arabic world, and the mantle of Ishmael, they've taken up. You know, if you read the Quran, it focuses a lot on Ishmael. It says Ishmael is the one. It says Ishmael, not Isaac. It says Abraham offered up Ishmael. You know, it says Ishmael and Hagar, they came to Mecca. And then Ishmael died in Mecca. You know, the whole thing. So you've got this whole Ishmael thing going on, the spirit of Ishmael, all that. Now, but to understand this, what does this reveal? Number one, about what's happened. Number one, God says, I will make a great nation. So God said that way back 4,000 years ago. He's done it. The Arab peoples are one of the most populous peoples in the world, number one. But number two, also, it's telling you from Genesis, from the tents of Abraham, that the destiny of the Arab people is linked to the Jewish people. They're all there together. That's why there's a link between, Arabs and Jews are cousins. You wouldn't know it because the enemy so destroyed this thing, and so used it. But in the end, they're going to be back together. In the end, there's a good ending to this. The end of the story, you have Isaac and Ishmael actually together burying Abraham at the end. That's kind of a foreshadow. What else do you see? Ishmael, think about him. He lost his father. Okay, so what do you have in Islam? You have God has no son. They cannot call God Father because they lost the Father years ago. And it's kind of like saying, well, if we don't have the Father, nobody has a father. You look at the Temple Mount, what do you see? It says God has no son. So it's so much so it's going to be against anyone who says, I'm a child of God. God is my daddy. It's going to be against all that. There's a rage in much of this history. The answer is in Ishmael. Ishmael would have a rage from that time on. He would have an anger from that time on. He'd have a resentment. One of the things about in this, you see this spirit in terrorism. It's a resentment about anybody who has privilege. It's a resentment of anyone who says, I'm loved. It's a resentment against the Jewish. But why? Why against the Jewish people? Because that's Isaac. So it's Ishmael and Isaac. And it's also about America. Because, first of all, if you're born again, if you're a Christian, your link is through Isaac. Messiah is the son of the Father. He's the beloved of the Father. So there's going to be a war against that as well. There's going to be a war against America because you have all that together. You have Jew, you have Christian, and you have what looks like blessing. All those factors that are all explained in the tense of Abraham. You've got a spirit that says, I'm the outcast one, so that leads to radicalism. That leads to, I can't get it this way, so I'm going to get it this way. I'm going to get it by the sword. I'm going to get it by, I'm going to take it back. Why is there such a focus on the land of Israel? It's all there in that mystery. Why? Because that was the inheritance of Isaac from Abraham. That's what Ishmael thought should have been his, the land of Israel. Now, the Arab people have much more land, have gigantic areas, but there's a concern about this little land because that's what Ishmael lost in his mind. It's the land of Israel. What also was the promise? The covenants, all that came from Abraham to Isaac. The covenants, the revelation of God, that came through Isaac, came through Israel. So what did Ishmael do? Well, we're going to have our own revelation. We're going to have our own religion, and we're going to take back everything, and we're going to say they all belong to us. Now we take the prophets. We take Jesus, but we'll call him a prophet. We'll take everything you have, but we'll say we'll make it, and we're better. We've got more. That's exactly the spirit of Ishmael. That's the whole mystery. Do you know that if you go to a city, even Jerusalem, the mosque has to be the tallest thing in the city? Why? It's like saying, I'm going to prove myself, and I'm bigger, I'm higher, I'm better. If you've got a tower, I'll bring it down. 9/11.
Wow.
You have all that, and so it tells us, everything from terrorism to the PLO to Hamas to Hezbollah to Islam to all these things. The answer is there. It all began in the book of beginning, in the tense of Abraham, and everything you see from, the anger, the fury, even suicide bomb. If you feel like, listen, you're outcast, you don't have much value, you're not loved, you're going to prove it by anger. Well, you can do those things. You can blow yourself up and in anger, for that reason. So we need to pray for Ishmael, at the same time. But we have to understand Ishmael. We have to be praying for those who are in Islam. We have to pray for the radical Islamists. We have to pray for all those of the Arab world who don't know the Lord. The ultimate thing is God still loved Ishmael. He still had a promise for Ishmael. And it tells us something in our life that, if you don't look at what God's blessed you, you're going to end up being angry, bitter. You're going to look at all that you don't have. You're going to be putting a curse on your life. As believers, we can sometimes have a spirit of Ishmael. And what I mean is this. We can have a spirit that we are not loved, that we'll never really be loved. We know that the words, we know the theology, but I don't really feel that with God. I'm kind of the outcast. I've been rejected. Well, that's an Ishmael kind of spirit. Right. God doesn't want that because that brings a curse. And God, therefore it says the antidote is God so loved us, he gave his beloved son that we could be beloved too. It says, live your life as beloved children. Now, meaning you may not have been a beloved child. Doesn't matter. Live your life now as a beloved child because you happen to be that, but live as if you were because you are that. The answer to so much in our own life is that we find who we are in God, which is to his beloved children, that we can say, not just that we can call him Father, but it says you will call him Abba, which isn't Father, it's Daddy, 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 that. Yeah. And so that's it. So the whole world hangs on what happened with Abraham and these two little sons. I mean, way back. I mean, the Bible has every answer and every explanation. We must pray and we must love Ishmael. We must share the gospel with Ishmael. God's by his grace. I've actually met eyewitnesses who have literally seen visions throughout the Arab world truly of Jesus. God is showing people who don't know him at all literally visions of Jesus, and they're getting saved.
Praise
we need to
God.
pray that the veil of Ishmael will be removed,
Yes.
and that he and Isaac will join hands again
Yes.
in the God of Abraham.
Amen.
The book of Genesis in Hebrew, it's Bereshit, which means literally the beginning. It's the beginning of everything. It's the beginning of the fall. You want to see why everything's happening. It's the beginning of the Arab-Israeli conflict. It's the beginning of all. It's the beginning of the promises of Messiah. Everything is there. The answer is in God, in everything. There's nothing outside of God. The answer is, and we're still being affected because God gives his word. I mean, the fact that the Jewish people still exist, that should not be at all. They should have been gone thousands of years ago. But they exist because God said it. They're in the news because God said it. God is behind the news.
So basically you're saying ISIS is connected to Ishmael.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So is the PLO, so is Hezbollah, so is Hamas, so is Osama bin Laden, so is Saddam Hussein. All of that, clearly, I mean, even they themselves will say they're linked to Ishmael. But I don't think they understand all that means. But the beginning is all there. And it kind of also tells us something. I mean, and God will redeem it, and the Arab people are a great people. But at the same time, it also tells you something else. Don't try to help God out. Do God's will.
That's
do God's
good.
will. Be patient. He'll do it his way, and you'll be used with it. But and have faith too as well. That's with it. But yes, it all. And notice something too. When Isaac, in a sense, came back to the land, that's when all this hell started. That's when when the Jewish people came back to their inheritance. That's when everything went crazy in the world.
Yeah.
Among Ishmael, but also, remember, the enemy knows a bit about the future. He knows enough that when the Jewish people come back to that land, it is a sign that his game is up. It is a sign that Messiah is coming. So that's why the whole world is in an uproar. That's why the United Nations has voted to condemn Israel. That's why there's all this terrorism. That's why, because the enemy is crazy. It's not about, ultimately, it's not Ishmael. Ultimately, it's the enemy behind that. And he will stir up anything he can. He will stir it up. God would view it, God's plan would be one day that Isaac and Ishmael will join hands, and that's in the Bible. There's going to be that in that day. But the enemy does everything he can to mess everything up. It's hard to even imagine that, but it's going to happen. It's true. It's true. But it's a sign of the enemy. When the enemy goes crazy, and a little word to our lives, again, so true. When the enemy goes crazy, don't get discouraged. When you're being attacked, you're in God's will. Don't get encouraged, because it is a sign of how big the purposes of God is for your life.
Amen.
The enemy's not wasting his time. He knows.
I've got to
So
ask you a question while we're still on this.
Yeah.
You mentioned the different countries in the line of Ishmael. Could you name them again for me? Name some of them?
Yeah, I will say it this way. There's no question that the blood of Ishmael is throughout the Arab world. This would affect the nation of Jordan, which, by the way, also has Edom, also has Esau in it. That's Edom. That's where Esau was. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Dubai. Basically, the whole Egypt, somewhat. Egypt has a lot of others. Egypt actually don't consider themselves Arab. They have others in it, but they have some. No question, there's some. But through the entire, all those things basically that have warred against Israel. If you look at the wars on Israel, Iran is not Arab. Iran is Persian. And that's a whole mystery. And even that there's a link with that in the Bible. Even what's happening in Iran is linked to that. But nevertheless, even those that are not by blood, they have done so by spirit. They are of the Quran. The Quran is saying we have the mantle of Ishmael. So even by blood or by spirit, it's Ishmael.